French prosecutors have opened an investigation into aggravated public insult and incitement to hatred or violence after a senator from Paraguay racially abused Kylian Mbappe following Paraguay's loss to France at the World Cup. The Paris prosecutor now launching the investigation after the National Unit for Combating Online Hate received the complaint from the French Football Federation. Celeste Amarilla, a senator for Paraguay's Liberal Radical Party, posted racist comments on X. They are racist. I've read them. It's really unpleasant. After Mbappe converted a winning penalty in France's victory over Paraguay on Saturday, she mocked the French captain's origins, upbringing, education and appearance. France advanced to the quarterfinals where they'll face Morocco on Thursday. Mbappe replied to the senator's words, calling her a despicable woman who was unworthy of serving in Paraguay's Congress. This from Delano de Souza.
France's captain trains at his latest practice session in Massachusetts on Monday. But under Kylian Mbappe's positive demeanor looms a vile and racist online attack. This following France's win over the weekend when Mbappe refused to shake hands with Paraguay's goalkeeper following their aggressive performance on the pitch. Paraguayan Senator Celeste Amarilla took to X to call the French captain a brute who didn't learn to write, adding Mbappe sucked on coconuts instead of mother's milk. She called the 27-year-old who was born in Paris a colonized Cameroonian who was pretending hard to be French. Hours later, Mbappe took to X to respond, calling the senator a despicable woman who was unworthy of her position. He added that her racism has made the world forget the historic journey Paraguay had during the World Cup. Mbappe has received swift support from the French Football Federation, who says it's filed a report with the public prosecutor's office and is exploring possible legal avenues. France's assistant coach also came to Mbappe's defense.
In 3 words, it's shameful, despicable, scandalous.
France's president has weighed into the spat, saying Mbappe had scored another goal with his reply. The dust-up, however, looks unlikely to quieten down, with the Paraguayan senator putting out a new statement on X saying Mbappe's arrogance started well before the match. Amarilla even threatened to file a lawsuit of her own if she doesn't receive an apology from France's captain.
Since Delano filed that report, of course, the United Nations has announced that it backs Kylian Mbappe, calling the words of the Paraguayan senator despicable. Let's get more and bring in our guest, Alexander Cooley, Clairtow Professor of Political Science at Barnard College. Thank you, sir, for being with us here. I'm wondering what your take is on this one, the remarks made by the senator against Kylian Mbappe.
Certainly they're racist and deplorable. They're ugly. I think all of this takes place in a context, though, where it seems like the politics and the off-the-pitch stories are now really starting to drown out some of the excellent football and the superstars that have been featured on it. Part of the problem here is that FIFA's own guidelines on racism used to be quite heavily promoted, stamp racism out, right? This was quite the initiative by FIFA, and that was gradually rolled back over the years. So I do think the tone needs to be set by the Federation. The campaign to stamp racism out, needs to be brought back and really emphasized.
I think you're spot on and correct, because this is something that I've reported on throughout my career as a journalist. The kick racism out campaign, which began in the UK to stop such things as racist chanting during football matches, has had a great success and squashed that. But there is something about, and something very insidious about, the way racism just basically raises its head at all moments of pressure, it seems. And this, of course, is a great example of that, I think. What happens? I mean, how do you stop that happening? It's about education, I presume, but then again, there are some people who just basically are racist.
It's about education, and it's about creating lines that you should not transgress, right? And oftentimes there'll be criticisms of sporting federations or organizations that say, okay, you're infringing on free speech, you're going over the top, or your rules are just like, too stringent. But that's the point of having rules. The point of having rules is that there are certain standards of behavior that just will not be tolerated, and that the governing body of the world's most popular sport will uphold in absolute terms, not relative terms, not depending on whether you're a political figure or not, whether you're a big donor or sponsor or not, whether you have a big personality, that these are principles that are not going to be compromised. And we've seen a shift away from that on questions of racism, on questions of individual rights, on questions of LGBTQ rights. FIFA has actually withdrawn on these issues of political rights.
The issue of the authorities, of the federations, of FIFA, setting the tone, putting down the rules, showing the guidelines to follow, has that been undermined by what has happened regarding the red card issue with the American player Donald Trump phoning personally Gianni Infantino to do something that I think anybody who's reported on football over the years would think it would be absolutely unthinkable that a head of state would get involved and get something overturned, something like a red card?
Yeah, but this is who Trump is. This is how he operates. Trump likes to take credit for things that he may have an influence on, or maybe he didn't have an influence on. So he's very eager to say, I'm the decider, I'm the influencer, I'm the man who make things happen. So this is completely predictable that Trump would insert himself. Again, we've talked about this before, Mark, how Infantino makes a deal that he's going to placate Trump. He's going to appeal to his ego. He's going to give him a peace prize. He's going to loop him in, give him a trophy, all in the hopes that Trump will somehow behave normally. And with this latest transgression, this takes, I think, the sting, the real momentum out and the good vibes that the American team had for so many, and thrust a political dimension in that obviously provided great motivation to the Belgian side, that absolutely walloped the U.S. side on the pitch. So I think this is part of a larger kind of FIFA as a mega organization issue, right? Where rather than remain relatively low key, neutral, Infantino very much sees himself as a global personality who courts world leaders like Trump, who goes after, mega corporate sponsorships and TV contracts, and very much sees himself as a global personality, as a global figure.
Alexander, we need to leave it there, sadly, but there's so much more to discuss, isn't there? Perhaps we can arrange to talk again another time. It would be really great. Alexander Cooley, Professor of Political Science at Barnard College. Thank you very much for your assessment and your analysis, and thank you for being with us.